Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We apologize that our closed session ran a little over time. I want to thank you for taking the patience to let us come back to the podium here, if you will. Welcome to the Board of Supervisors chamber for our Board of Supervisors meeting for Calaveras County. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, do we have any announcements from the board members? Any supervisor announcements? I have an announcement. This week is the Police Memorial Week. I was in Sacramento yesterday and observed the ceremonies there. And I'd like everybody to kind of realize what difficult role that our law enforcement folks play. Last year, just in California, we lost 12 police officers in the line of duty. That means there was 12 families on Thanksgiving and Christmas that had a place setting where no one was at. These folks do this job day and night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And all they do is something that we don't do as citizens. So I'm going to ask you to join me. Next time you see a peace officer on the street, don't get mad at them. Don't get upset because you read something or somebody wrote something about it. Just tell them thanks. That's all we need. Thank you, folks. Thank you. I lost my agenda, unfortunately.
Mr. Chairman, I have one quick announcement.
Sure. Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to announce, and I was going to talk about frog jump. I see we're doing that later on, but I wanted to also announce that the Central Fire Department's having their mud run on this Saturday at 10 o'clock up in Mountain Ranch. It's a great fundraiser to support your community and a great opportunity to get in shape. So look up Central Fire on the web, and if you want to run through the mud for 5K, join up and support your local fire department. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
The report of closed session held on May 5th, 2017. Number 1, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation, 1 case, pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2. There was no reportable action taken. Item 2, public employment, pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, building official. On a 4-to-1 vote with Supervisor Garamendi dissenting, the board directed staff to extend an offer to the chosen candidate for the position of building official. Upon acceptance and completion of the candidate's background, staff will announce the candidate's name and will bring forward a resolution memorializing the appointment.
Okay.
No, I'm not done.
Oh, you have one more.
Got lots more. Report of closed session held this morning pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, personnel matter, conference with labor negotiators Judy Hawkins, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, regarding Deputy Sheriff's Association, Sheriff's Management Unit, Service Employees International Union, and Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association negotiations. No reportable action. There are 3 announcements, the first being item 21 on today's agenda regarding the Fish and Game Commission's requested letter of support will be withdrawn from today's agenda and possibly brought back on a future agenda. The board will recess today from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. to participate in the Government Center frog jump activities. And just a reminder that the public should remain on the audience side of the podium and should not be in the area between the dais and the podium, often referred to as the well.
Okay. This time we have a couple of proclamations, actually resolutions of proclamations. I'd like to start off with proclaiming and recognizing the Calaveras County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee, May 18th to 21st, 2017. Whereas the Calaveras County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee, May 18th through 21st, 2017, whose history dates back to the 1880s when wagon wheels roamed on our roads and Mark Twain first penned the celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County. And whereas the Calaveras County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee is a countywide event with annual attendance exceeding 35,000. And whereas the Calaveras County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee encourages agricultural production and education, local arts, encourages youth and highlights of the best in Calaveras County. And whereas the theme of this year's event is Country Nights and Carnival Lights, recognizing the celebration of all things Calaveras, including arts and agricultural. And whereas activities at the county fairgrounds generates approximately $7,700,000 in related spending activity annually. Therefore, let it be proclaimed that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors proclaim the Calaveras County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee to be the signature event in Calaveras County. I would entertain a motion.
So moved, Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Mills.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, I'll bring it to the board for comment or vote. No comments by the board. All members indicate by saying aye to the agreement of the motion. All members disagreeing by saying no. Call for the vote for the board of members. Indicate your vote, please.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed unanimously, 5-0. And we have a presentation.
It's our honor to be here today, and one of our county traditions is to hold the frog jump here. And I believe you have 82 entrants, which is 85 now, so which is big. So our frog committee will be here. We'll also be at the Capitol tomorrow. We're looking for great things this year, and we want to thank the county for their support, specifically just coming to our events and helping us so much. And I'd like to also thank Sheriff Rick Basilio for what they do for us and just taking the lead on our law enforcement. And they're going to have the bikes out there this year, so that'll be kind of fun. So, and we also are going to have some assistance from your folks in custody this week, so that'll be fun. We have a lot of work that needs to be done, so we just want to thank you for your support. And to us, the frog is really more than just this annual event. It truly is an economic engine for our county. So, thank you.
Thank you. Lori, I just want to thank you very much for all the work that you do out at the fair and making this such a successful event. And definitely want to encourage all my fellow board members to be at the livestock auction on Sunday.
I'm actually judging the 4-H competition. Supervisor.
This is very important. I know the sheriff is always there, and so I look forward to seeing you all at Frog Jump.
Thank you. I believe Supervisor Garamendi, you have a proclamation.
I do.
So item 3 is
I'm
from
sorry.
Behavioral Health Services Mental Health Program to adopt a proclamation recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month in Calaveras County.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I serve on the Mental Health Advisory Committee, and it's a great committee. I'm very proud to be on there. It really works very closely with both families, healthcare, addiction issues, law enforcement. And it's a very positive group, really trying to make this a better and stronger community. And so I really appreciate the work that all the volunteers and staff put into this for the county. So I get to read a proclamation declaring May as Mental Health Awareness Month. Calaveras County. Whereas Mental Health Awareness Month is an annual observance designed to increase awareness about mental health, wellness, recovery, prevention, awareness, education, and stigma reduction. And whereas it is the goal of the Health and Human Services Agency Behavioral Health Division Mental Health Program to inform and educate people on the ways that the mind and body interact with each other and provide tips and tools for taking positive action to protect mental health and promote whole health. Therefore, be it resolved, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors proclaims the month of May 2017 as Mental Health Awareness Month in Calaveras County, and be it further resolved that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors encourages all residents, businesses, public and private agencies, media and educational institutions to recognize and be aware of the importance of mind health and the need for appropriate and accessible services and resources for people with mental illness. There's our proclamation. Mr. Chair, I think we'd seek a motion.
I would entertain a motion to accept the proclamation for mental health awareness.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Mills. Second by Supervisor Clapp. Any public comment?
Good morning, Board.
Morning. Good morning.
John Lawless, Mental Health Director. Thank you, Supervisor Garamendi, for reading that. It's interesting that in our society, about 1 in 5 of us will experience some form of mental illness. It might just be a depression based on a bad day or something happening in our lives, and it may be as severe as psychotic disorder where we hear voices or see things that other people don't see. And we want you to know that we are here to serve the people of our community. We work with the state of California, and we're contracted to see the severely mentally ill. And each month we serve about 600 of our community members, either through medication or counseling services. And we feel in doing that, that we're helping to keep our community healthy and safer. And we provide hospitalization services for those who are unable to remain in the community. And we feel it a real privilege, and we want to thank you for honoring us and for making Mental Health Awareness Month May. I also have one community member who is a part of our Mental Health Board, and she also receives mental health services, and she has some gifts that she would like to give to the board.
Ma'am, could you bring it over there for us? Thank you. Excellent.
Yes, thank you. Every year, the supervisors proclaim May as Mental Health Awareness Month, but this year we have something to really, really celebrate because we have the opening of our new wellness center, the living room, wellness cabin as we call it now. We fought for years to get this place, and we've even had issues with Mental Health America over a contract that they had with us. It just wasn't a good fit. And then there's been so many forces trying to bring us down, but we were really blessed. I think 2 years ago, I was on an interview panel one morning, and the first interview of the day was Deidre Black, and it was a phone interview, and it's like she became my hero right off the start. To begin with, she served in our country, in the Army, and this woman has worked in the prison systems. Anyway, she came to our county, and she has done so much for us. I mean, she's amazing. She's got so many degrees, and, you know, we're going to lose her one day because she's going to be Dr. Black. But she's done, we can't thank her enough. And it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with the living room, but it is a big deal. When I first got on the Mental Health Board, Advisory Board a few years, 7 years back to be exact, the statistics on suicide was that we had the highest rate of suicide per capita in the state of California. I don't know what the statistics are now, but every one of us here has somebody in their family or knows somebody that either has some form of mental illness, whether it's anxiety, depression, an eating disorder, or they have maybe an issue with medication or alcohol, and we also represent that because it all goes hand in hand, being healthy mentally and physically. And anyway, so the nice thing about the living room is we're not just reaching out to people with, psychosocial rehabilitation, but we've tried to enforce the 12-step programs and more of a rehabilitation program. And it's just a beautiful building in general, and you should all come down and see it. And thank you, Jack, for taking a sincere interest in our board. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I believe we have a motion on the floor for a vote. All board members in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries 5-0 unanimous. And we have a presentation.
Kristen, come back. Rita.
Thank you, folks. Madam Clerk?
Public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard.
Madam Clerk, I believe we have a 3-minute period for public comment, and our clock is still, oh, we do have it, okay.
No, we just have this one.
Oh, okay.
We always have Diane. Marty Crane, Rancho. I just wanted to say that the word FEMA conjures up many memories, personal experiences, and individual feelings here locally in Calaveras County. FEMA is a big word. It's where emergency preparedness programs and activities are administered on behalf of the public, another big word. When we talk about emergency preparedness, we must understand that it's up to all of us to do our part. Preparing ahead of an emergency, number one, gives us options, reduces the suffering for ourselves, our neighbors, and the entire community. Being prepared makes us more resilient when the worst happens to our communities. It helps to ensure that an emergency doesn't turn into a disaster. We've had many examples from which to learn. The old Gulch Fire, the Rim Fire, Patterson Fire, Butte Fire, and many other events that have impacted our families as well. And these individual events usually don't have resources designated to the Butte Fire or the Rim Fire. They're on their own. These families are. So do we learn from these events? If we do we act on what we've learned? Last week, I attended a 4-day FEMA training here in San Andreas. These trainings, workshops, have immense value to our local efforts. They're made available to only a handful of communities across the United States, and only as often as every 5 to 10 years. So what does that mean to Calaveras? There are 50 states in the United States, equaling 3,144 county equivalents, and they came to Calaveras. They only do about 5 trainings in Maryland a year, and about 10 to 15 throughout the United States. But they came to Calaveras. Great in-depth conversations revealed many areas where we can and must improve. I am confident that our county departments have already begun the process. So we just have to keep it going. Individually, we all have a responsibility to step up and do what we can to make sure we as individuals and as a community have options in the next emergency.
30 seconds.
There are many free training opportunities. I'm off to one today. So please, make your own go bag, think about it, and go be fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Good morning, Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I have a couple items that affect our economy, and I know that the board cannot take positions on everything that the state government does. If you were to do that, you wouldn't have any time to do anything else. But there are, from time to time, things that the state government is proposing that could have a dramatic effect on our local economy. And so we have two items. Both of these are supported by the California Association of Realtors. And both of the bills, the association recommends opposing it. So if you would conclude that this would have a significant effect on our county, we would recommend that you contact our state representatives and also the Association of Rural Counties to see if they would also do the same. The first one is SB 640, which is a service tax, and this is statewide, and it'll have the effect of actually causing services to be provided by out-of-state companies because of the service tax, the local companies will be at a disadvantage. Also, it places a burden on real estate transactions, and is a regressive tax. It disproportionately has a negative impact on low and middle income families who spend rather than save a larger percent of their income on essential goods and services. The second, that currently is in the Senate. The second bill is AB 1059, and it involves dual agency, and essentially it kills dual agency. This is where real estate brokers, many times you have a buyer's broker or a seller's broker, and other times you have simply one broker that represents both parties. And most salespeople like to sell their own listing, so they try to be a dual agent so they can get their own buyer, and those transactions sometimes go more smoothly than otherwise. Also, when you have industries like in a development, if you eliminate dual agency, the representative that's representing the developer couldn't sell his own properties because he couldn't be an agent for the buyer as well.
15 seconds.
It just doesn't work. So we, along with the other bill, we recommend you oppose. And the status is in the Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Segala. Any further public comment?
Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. Two announcements. Number one, fair starting next week, and Public Works has got 3 booths, if I've said it correctly. One celebrating transit, one celebrating integrated waste management, and the third booth, Public Works in general. And that ties into the following week, which is National Public Works Week, starting May 21st. So I'd like to publicly acknowledge Public Works as the people behind the scenes that make the toilets flush, the water come out of the taps, allow the roads to run, move the snow. And so it's not just the people within my department here in the county, but all of our service providers throughout the county that make our lives livable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grove.
Good morning, Board. Good morning, Chairman. I would like to pass out
I know they're talking about funding for the ban, and Trinity County has a breakdown of how they got funding of $80,000. And I just wanted to give that to you as far as more knowledge for you. It's a 20-page document that if you get time to read it, it would be a little bit of education for you. I've been studying this and studying this and studying this because I know we are broke. I know we are tight on funds. We all are, not just our county. And this might give us an insight of where we could reach for some more funding somewhere. So.
Thank you very much.
Brock Estes from Valley Springs. I'm going to continue coming before you every couple of weeks for 3 minutes and just toss out some facts as I find them about the cannabis question. And I'm doing this because this is going to change everybody's lives in the county. So it's an important issue. I may tell you things you already know. I may tell you things you don't know. I'm going to also say things that I don't know. At the moment, everyone is so divided. They're either for continuing the urgency ordinance or in some way regulating pot or banning it. People don't seem to be capable yet of looking for a third way. The result is going to be probably a 3-2 vote for a ban, and then half the people are going to be really ticked off, and the other half are going to think they're going to be happy. Although the half that are ticked off are going to immediately file lawsuits, which are probably going to take a couple years to go through, and we're going to muddle through with nothing decided for quite a while. So while if I was forced to make a choice, I would support a ban, I'm not in favor of a ban because I don't think it's going to solve the problem at all. Nor do I think that regulation is going to solve the problem. I think there has to be a third way, and I think there is one. I want you to think for a moment that you're on a train coming back from Reno on a beautiful Sunday. You go through the mountains, you go over the highest peak. You're having a great time. Everything looks beautiful. You head down towards Auburn. It's about 40 miles down. And all of a sudden the conductor comes on and says, I don't want to alarm you, but I am obligated to tell you the braking system has failed on the train. We are not able to stop the train. Now, a lot of people are going to panic, and yet nothing's really changed. You're still driving through beautiful scenery. Everything's going fine, but now you know there's a problem ahead. Some people are going to say, oh my God, we have got to find a way to stop this train. Those would be the ban people. Some people are going to say, no problem, let's just keep going. Eventually it'll flatten out and it'll stop of its own momentum. Those would be the regulating people. Some people are going to say, oh my God, I'm jumping off. Those would be the people who are selling their property and moving out of the county because they're afraid of what's going on.
30 seconds.
Didn't get much out today. There is an impediment on the tracks, and that impediment is 5 years down the road. Because for 5 years, Prop 64 bans large-scale marijuana operations from coming into counties and taking over and essentially creating a monopoly by forcing out small people. If we dither and go through court battles for 5 years, those people are going to come in with big money, and the people we do care about, people who've grown up here and may be farming marijuana, are going to be forced out of business by monopolies. Thank you very much.
Sharon Torrance, Public Information Officer. I just wanted to make the board aware, if they weren't already, that this is also Wildfire Prevention Safety Week. So I think that everybody here is aware of what can happen, and preparedness is the key. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any further public comment? Mr. McManus.
Bill McManus, good morning. About 10 days ago, we got a copy of the release of the draft ordinance that the board has proposed. In reading it, we found that pot shops were not included in the ban, which was supposed to be a comprehensive ban for commercial growing, for everything that wasn't specifically provided for by law. In reading the document, it is not an oversight that it's not included. The language is clear. It's specifically exempted. Our organization, in talking to hundreds, if not thousands, of people across the county, are having a hard time explaining this. People have a couple questions. First of all, why? Why did you exempt it from the ban when we thought you were going to take care of all the commercial cultivation? And believe me, pot shops have unlimited amounts of product that they can grow. So it's not the same as what you're dealing with now. There are no reasonable limits on it. The second question we would ask is, if you think it's a good idea to exempt it, if you think it's a good idea to accommodate it, please give us your reasoning. When people ask me, why is the board doing this, I cannot explain it for them. I can't give your words to them. I think we'd like to have some sort of statement made from the board why you're doing this, why you think it's a good idea, so that people have the answers. When we have our meetings, there's a lot of discussion about this. Probably the best thing that we could ask for is that one supervisor or two ask for a polling of the board. Is this the direction you really want to go in? Or can we fix this problem now and include pot shops in the existing ban ordinance? The EIR certainly supports banning as the most environmentally best alternative. And so we would hope that the board would go through this process and fix the problem now. If you ban it now, you can have a couple of years for Prop 64 and 266 to start shaking out. Let someone else, let some other city or county be the crash test dummies for these programs. Why does Calaveras County have to do it? Ban it for a couple of years and then observe what's going on around the county, around the state, in different cities and counties. If you want to readdress it, you can. But if you do, don't do it like you did the urgency ordinance. Please be prepared to do it. Please have everything in place to do it. Otherwise, don't do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments?
Good morning.
Morning.
All right. My time to start? Okay. Thank you for having us here today. I just wanted to say that I'm not lucky enough to be retired, so it's very seldom I get to be at these meetings, but I do watch all of them online. We are living in a time when good is often called bad, and bad things are now considered good. We can see many issues that were not considered good when you all were a lot younger, but now are considered good. It is interesting to me that society has not gotten better. I have not publicly come out at these meetings about commercial marijuana, but today I am. I have lived here for 30 years. I do not like what I see, and it saddens me. I have researched this issue very thoroughly, and I cannot see any true good that has come from commercial marijuana being in our county. I want you to know that I support the direction this board is going, and I appreciate the spirit of the board as well. As the last board we had, I never felt comfortable signing my name to a letter. I would just initial it. There are many, many more voters who feel the same way as I, but are too scared and intimidated to stand up and be counted. I hope that my words will inspire them to come out and be counted too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ben Stopper, District 5. Last meeting, there was a proposed ordinance during supervisor comment. Now I want to go back to the chair's comments to the frog jump, encouraging agricultural production and use. And I will remind you, if you actually read the law and understand the the general plan, La Quintana has an HOA. Within the rules of that HOA, roosters are not allowed in La Quintana. Rancho Calaveras, I have the community plan here. Rancho Calaveras is Rancho Calaveras. It's rural residential land. What they don't want there is outdoor commercial uses, but everyone's allowed to own chickens and provide for their family with their eggs, if so needed. To go on to another issue, to review part of the community vision of Rancho Calaveras and Jenny Lynn and the community plan. The Rancho Calaveras community desires to maintain the rural residential atmosphere and single-family residential character, and to prohibit commercial and multifamily development. Let that set in, commercial. Permanent commercial zoning is not permitted in Rancho Calaveras, which goes hand in hand with the commercial use. The only allowed use that falls into commercial use is the real estate office on Highway 26 and Baldwin Street. This is a legal, non-conforming use, as it was established when lots were first sold by Pacific Cascade and predates the 1973 special plan. Now, I'm not going to go on and read the rest of it, but what the people in Rancho Calaveras are effectively saying is they don't want any outdoor commercial use in their community. So in this sense, the urgency ordinance making the marijuana a commercial use is not a pliable use in Rancho Calaveras. So that is one way that you can actually get marijuana out of communities, through an established community plan. And it already says it in there in the old community plan for Rancho Calaveras. So in that sense, anybody that's commercially growing conflicts with prior law. Thank you. Do your research. Let's figure this out. Get it done right.
Thank you. Mr. Bowerman?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for being here. Just a couple of quick corrections. With the Calaveras, right? With the dispensaries, they don't have like an unlimited amount they can grow. It depends on space. The way the rules are written, they can only grow in their allotted space that they've got. That they can't just go out and get farms and do this and do that. Okay, that's not how that works. So they have access to cannabis through farms, but what they can grow is very limited. It's limited to the space that they have. Okay. Regarding the EIR, one of the things I got out of that was that, true, if everything went back to nature, it'd be a lot cleaner. Totally got that. I don't think that's going to happen. But that in their three options, they thought the number one option was a ban. Because, again, if we go back to nature, it would be cleaner. Got that. But it also said that a ban without funds will make things worse. And they're very clear about that. So by the time you get through the entire 140 or 240 pages, get their main point. A ban without funds will make things worse. Last Friday, our President Trump signed a bill. In that bill, protected medical marijuana in regulated states. By the way, we're up to 29 states that now have legalized medical cannabis, plus Washington, D.C. So the billions of dollars to back a ban, not there. I think we're still going to get the 34, and that would be good. Okay, that'll help. Okay. We really do need to get to the bottom of this. We need to get things taken care of. We need to get back to living, because life isn't just all about cannabis. There's some good solutions to this. Give us a couple more weeks. We'll present one. Thank you very much for serving.
Thank you.
Good morning. I want you to know that I appreciate you all and everything that you are doing to try to reverse the mess that the last board has made for our county. My family has been in Calaveras County since before World War II, and I stayed here to raise my own family because I love it. I support you in the ban you are considering. Calaveras County needs to be free of all the marijuana except for what is allowed under state law. I would also like to ask that you would approve all that is needed by our sheriff and the other law enforcement departments to be able to do their jobs effectively to make Calaveras safe again. Calaveras needs to stop being known as Cannabis County, and it needs to get back to the good old days of what we used to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, Sheriff.
Morning, Board. Morning, Mr. Chair. Staff, how are we doing today? A couple of things. I want to reiterate what Ms. Giannini said, that we're going to have our bike team up and running again and back out at the fair, so you'll see us pedaling, and I will be pedaling right alongside of them. I won't give that up. As far as the inmates, they are going to be out there for a couple of days helping weed eat around the fairgrounds to get things taken care of, and I am working on getting the administration area done here at the government center so that you guys can find your door when you want to go in. I wanted to talk about the police officers memorial. You talked about that. You touched on that. Mr. Kravitz talked about the public or road department's week. It is also Correctional Officers Week, and in 1984, May 6th, President Reagan did a proclamation announcing this week as Correctional Officers Week. So I want to thank my correctional officers and all correctional officers around the state. I've also posted that on our webpage. The only other thing I have to talk about is there has been some talk in the county through the marijuana growers how the Sheriff's Department is holding up their business licenses. I have a copy of one of our business licenses here, and I also have the business license questionnaire that's on the county's webpage. There are 3 departments in the county that are mandatory to sign off on business licenses, and they are the assessor, planning, and building. Sheriff's Department is not a mandatory signature for business licenses. Some of the business licenses that we sign off on are tattoo parlors, bars, saloons, cannabis clubs, fortune tellers, process or eviction notices servers, private investigators, dating services, pawn shops, dealers, door-to-door solicitors, firearms dealers, child care, and taxi cabs. So at any given point, any of these businesses could actually have a sex registrant that is able to get a business license, and I can be overridden on that. The Sheriff's Department needs to be a mandatory signature on business licenses. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I would like the board to look at that and see about changing that through a resolution. It needs to be fixed because we could have daycare providers that have sex offenders working in them. It's not what we want in our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Any further public comment? Okay, folks, seeing none, we're going to take our mandatory federal law break of 15 minutes. We'll be back. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Clerk.
Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. Hold on a second. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, anybody from the public would like to pull any item on the consent agenda? Seeing no response, I'll bring it to the board. Any board member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda?
I would like to pull item number 8, Mr. Chair.
Item number 8, Supervisor Tofinelli. Thank you.
I'd like to pull item number 14.
Number 14 by Supervisor Mills. Thank you. Any other board member? Any staff? Okay. Seeing that, I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda remaining agenda items.
So moved, Mr.
Supervisor
Mr. Chair.
Tofinelli, you were first. Second? Second, Supervisor Clapp. Any public comment? No public comment. I'll bring it to the board to the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed indicate by saying no. Seeing none, motion carries 5-0 unanimous.
Item 8 is from Behavioral Health Services Mental Health Program. Authorize the board chair to execute a master lease agreement with Crossroads Transitional Housing for the period of May 10th, 2017 through June 30th, 2024 in an amount not to exceed $566,000, and authorize the Director of Health and Human Services to execute an operational memorandum of understanding and any subsequent amendments for the administration and oversight of a supported transitional housing program for the period of May 10th, 2017 through June 30th, 2024.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kristen Brinks, Health and Human Services. The item before you today is the result of direction that my team and I received on February 28th, 2017, in which the board directed us to work with Crossroads Turning Point of Arnold to plan, develop, and manage a transitional supportive housing program through the mental health program, with the goal of providing a supportive transitional housing program for adults with serious mental illness who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness, and negotiate an agreement with Crossroads Turning Point of Arnold that to then be reviewed and approved by the Board of Supervisors for the provision of property management and landlord services required to operate such a program. So this is the result of that direction. So the item before you today includes both a master lease agreement for a transitional housing program, as well as a memorandum of understanding that identifies the various roles and responsibilities that both my team and I will engage in, as well as our partner, Crossroads Transitional Living, to serve those community members with serious mental illness. The purpose, again, I've mentioned it before, this is a much-needed housing support. As you are well aware, when it comes to an individual's recovery plan in terms of managing their serious mental illness, not having that proper support, such as stable housing, can be a barrier to achieving success in that recovery. And so we're grateful that our partners in the community have responded to the request for proposals that we had disseminated a few months ago. This was the third time we had released this request for proposal, so having a respondent, we are very appreciative. And it's been a really great working relationship, trying to identify a program and service that would work for our community and meet the needs of our community. So best practices, as I mentioned before. Right now, as you know, I bring a number of items to your board for higher levels of placement. I oftentimes will return to your board with items for psychiatric health facilities, very costly, as you know, in the staff reports, board and care, higher costs of service, mental health rehabilitation centers, again, higher costs of services. And we know in mental health that having a local community-based resource that is Also, an opportunity for individuals to receive community services in that intensive case management, which is so important and integral for an individual's recovery at a lower cost, which this is just an important piece of it. So the item before you, just to be very, very clear, it is not just a lease. It is not just a house that we are leasing because it's $6,000. And so I wanted to be clear that this is very much a program. Crossroads will be providing employment services. They have a wonderful history of doing so successfully with individuals who have drug and alcohol issues. And so they are embarking on a new endeavor with us to provide such services to those with serious mental illness. They also are going to be providing the day-to-day management of the services, and then our team will be bringing services, individual therapies, group therapies to the house itself. It's unique, a first of its kind in the community, and we're grateful to the Mental Health Board who's provided wonderful guidance on this endeavor as well. And just to touch a little bit on the financing, because this is an important piece to all. My team and I take our responsibility to the tax dollar very, very seriously. And so in doing so, I wanted to kind of point out some of the financial impacts. The way that this item is currently proposed, you're seeing it's a $6,000 a month lease. When you break that down, because this transitional housing program can accommodate 4 to 6 individuals, and the prioritization will be for those stepping down from that higher level of care. So from that board and care level into a transitional setting in our community. So on average, we pay $2,000 per month for a board and care facility per individual, for one individual. We can pay up to approximately $10,800 per month for a locked facility, one individual. And we could pay up to $750 a day or $22,000 a day for a Institute of Mental Disorders, which oftentimes to restore individuals to competency. Very expensive costs. So what we're trying to do is twofold. It is create a community service that will be not only good for our consumers, good for our community, that is a local-based setting, but it will also be a cost-effective model that we are hopeful will decrease some of our costs that we have. So we have every intention of fully evaluating this program as we move forward, and we hope that your board will approve such an item today. At this time, I can take any questions.
Supervisor Tofinelli.
Yes, Kristen, thank you so much for coming forward with the explanation that was not in our packet, explaining exactly what's going on and the costs associated with it. So thank you very much for doing that. And I would move this item, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Supervisor Tofinelli, seconded by Supervisor Clapp. Any public comment on this issue, on this item?
I understand that with this expense, there's going to be approximately 6 people that will be helped. And I understand that this will be like a home that's in a subdivision, perhaps? Or is it set up so that the clients can come and go freely, or are they restrained? Some little basic questions like that would be good to be answered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Segala.
So the home itself is actually kind of in a, it is not in a subdivision. It is off of Highway 4. And Mr. Cullum is here, who is from Crossroads Transitional Living, and can provide a little bit more of the history on the home if necessary. And I forgot your other question.
How many bedrooms?
Oh, okay, excuse me. So there will be 4 bedrooms upon the completion of some necessary modifications that need to be made to the home. And so depending on the clientele, we could have up to 6 individuals residing in the home for a limited time at one time.
Mr. Segala, did that answer your issues?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Any further public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. It's been moved and seconded. Any board questions? Seeing that we've been moved and seconded, I would entertain a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 14 is from Public Works to adopt a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Works to secure federal funding under FTA Section 5311, 49 USC Section 5311 with the California Department of Transportation for operating Calaveras Transit.
Mr. Krovis.
Thank you. Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. This is a federal grant that's granted to Caltrans, and then Calaveras County Public Works becomes a subrecipient. The intent of the grant is for operations of the transit system. It is a formulary amount based on population of rural areas. It changes annually, and this is an item that is required for Calaveras to apply for and receive grant funds. It is a matching program, meaning that there have to be other funds to match this grant amount, but those funds can, the matching funds can come through LTF funds or STA funds, which are regularly provided to transit from the state. That's about all there is to this item, so I'll entertain any questions.
Supervisor Mills.
Thank you. Good morning, Jeff. Is the funding that you're looking for 17-18?
Yes, it is.
And I guess this kind of speaks to what Supervisor Tofinelli had spoken to in the previous agenda item, is that because there wasn't really a lot of supporting documents on this about what this grant was, that would be very helpful in the future, just to be able to give us the additional piece of information. I mean, I went up online and pulled it up myself, and that's fine, but just to have that as part of our agenda packet, I think would be very, very helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. We will do that.
So thank you for your work in getting this done and being sure that this is underway for next year. And with that, I'd move the item.
Any further comment by the board? Supervisor.
Jeff, have you rode the transit yet?
Yes, I have.
Good man.
Supervisor Tofinelli, your light's on. Do you wish to speak?
No, I turned it on for the vote.
Oh. At this time, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Moved by Supervisor Mills.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any public comment?
Yeah, House County Taxpayer Association. We appreciate the good work that Public Works is doing on this. I'm not sure what sort of money we're dealing with. Are we dealing with millions or more? And also, if there was an alternative to private forms of transit, what effect would this have on that? In other words, I think there's I forget the name of it, Uber or something like that, where people can get inexpensive transportation that's provided by other people and it's computerized. And I'm wondering if the influx of the federal money will have some sort of negative effect on that. And also, is it possible to have private bus service in some areas and other forms of transportation? And so I think we want to avoid getting ourselves locked into a federal approach or program that would exclude other ways that might be a better service to people. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further public comment?
Deborah Mullen, Public Works. I'd like to address Mr. Segala's concerns. The FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, is working to accommodate the influx of ride-hailing services and are coming out with regulations to govern that. And from what I understand at this time is that we can partner with private agencies that want to provide transportation if there is more than one service offering the service, so that we are not telling our riders, okay, you have to take Joe's taxi service to Glencoe. We can tell them you can take Joe or John Smith, and then they make the choice. So there are accommodations. We're perfectly willing to work with any kind of private transit service that wants to come forward and work with us if we can, come up with a partnership that serves the community better and saves money.
Thank you, ma'am. That address your issue, Mr. Segala?
Except the amount of money involved.
This 5311 grant is for it's $250 something. Financing $245,902. And I have fare shuttle flyers, by the way.
Thank you. Any further public comment? I'll bring it back to the board for any comment before the vote. Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. 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 All opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous.
Item 20 is from the Administrative Office to receive a report from staff, Cal OES, and local organizations regarding the ongoing Butte Fire recovery.
I would announce that this is the regular agenda. We are off the consent agenda, now on the regular agenda. Mr. Moss.
Good morning, Board. Brian Moss, Administrative Office. This is our once-a-month update on Butte Fire recovery, and as the Board's well aware, this is your opportunity to ask your department heads that are here as to what the status is. As you know, there's very strong progress being made in the Butte Fire, the burn area, and I'm sure Mr. Krovitz would be talking to you a little bit about the number of trees that have been felled and the number of trees that have yet to come out of the burn. So again, some very good things happening with this right now. So if there's any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those right now or turn this over to your department heads.
Board have questions of Mr. Moss? I have a question. Where do we stand on our, I take that back, wrong issue, it's tree mortality.
Understood.
We're dealing with Butte Fire.
Those are the other trees.
Okay. All right, I have nothing on the Butte Fire issue. Any questions by the board?
Thank you.
Any public comment? Oh. Okay. I'm sorry. Mr. Segala?
Yes.
I think we need to hear from Mr. Krova's staff first, then we'll go back to public comment. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lori Giannetti, and I'm with Calaveras Recovers, and 19 months ago, Calaveras Recovers was organized, and we started helping people rebuild. To date, we've finished 5 homes. 4 are very close, and 1 has been rocked in. We could not have done that without the help of our partners, the National Mennonite Disaster Services, Red Cross, and World Renew. Our national partners are, some left May 1st, and some are leaving the middle of May. The bulk of our volunteer base has been from Canada and from the Midwest and the Northeast, and many of them are Amish farmers, and they need to go home and start planting, and so they are doing that. Regionally, we're still going to get some help, though, to finish those homes. The trailer is going to be moving June 1st out of Mountain Ranch, and then our caseworker will be working out of the office that the Red Cross has now in San Andreas. Well, they'll still help administer the RCRC grant for the county and other things. So it's been quite a journey, and I think the structure that FEMA gave us 19 months ago and the partnerships that were created with these national organizations are there for us. And the structure's in place. We'll know what to do next time. or be able to tell someone else what to do next time. So, just a little caveat there. We could not also have done it without some very generous support from the Amador Community Foundation, the Calaveras Community Foundation, and to be quite frank, Cinders and the Cinders family, who have continually donated, sent staff out, and just ran these projects because we didn't have a construction manager, and so it's been a really good journey. We've had people in homes, and the homes that are the least, that we have the most to do are on Harbor Road. Surprise, surprise. But Supervisor Garamendi was real helpful with us, just keeping us informed on when we could get there and what we could do. So thank you, and we're getting towards the end of our project, and we just want to thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, are we going to hear from each department, or do we just ask questions?
What I'd like to do is hear from each department. Maybe those questions may be answered, then we will have a question period.
Great.
Good morning. Mel Knight, Butte Fire Debris Removal. Quite a bit of activity now, so I'm going to take a few minutes to just update on the progress, and there may be some overlap or confusion over the tree removal debris removal and the structural debris removal, which I'm talking about, which are actually two distinct funding sources and recovery sources. Just as a reminder, from the fire, once it overwhelmed local resources, as is typical with a disaster, we've next called in state agencies. So Cal Recycle came in with a unique program which did the structural debris removal that removed potentially hazardous material, which is a little different than typically you'll see. Once that resource was overwhelmed, we brought in FEMA, which brought in another level of funding availability and another level of accountability and requirements. By the time the fire was out, all the debris had settled. We ended up with eventually 854 properties that were part of this program. Of the 854, it required actually 30-plus 10-person crews removing 500 million pounds of potentially dangerous debris removal. And the total cost, as tallied to date, was in excess of $100 million on the part of both the state and their contractors. And I'll get into it in a moment, but actually the state has attributed the cost to each individual property, although they haven't finished allocating certain of the overhead costs. And that's a bit of a complication as we get into the recovery activities. Examples of the cost, by the way, net cost for that number of properties comes out to in excess of $100,000 per property. It certainly is a great deal of money. It sounds initially to be a shocking amount of money, but as at least I've looked at this and as I'm familiar with other disaster responses, always disaster response is much in excess of cost for dealing with individual similar activities. If we'd had 1, 2, or 5 homes burned, we would not have had to bring in 300 workers from outside the area who were paid travel, per diem, training cost, all sorts of additional activities and costs there. We had to bring in all sorts of labor that would end up having to be paid prevailing wage through various requirements of the federal and state funding. There were hundreds of truckers that had to be involved. The material far exceeded local capacity for disposal. So recycling and disposal all had to go outside the area for the most part. We would have overwhelmed Rock Creek, plus Rock Creek wasn't prepared to take many of these types of materials. So it was one that you had very, very high cost. We had much of it done in inclement weather, and it was a very difficult and costly operation. We found our costs at the Butte Fire were higher than those in Lakefoot because of terrain for the most part, but they were also very high in Lake and in similar activities. So it was one at least that the costs were fairly high. We do have an accounting per property for each of the incremental costs. Includes things like air sampling that had to be done. erosion control, things that you wouldn't see again with individual sampling. So it was one that it was a pretty extensive program, and that's one reason the costs were quite high. And the next question comes up is, why is the county doing this invoicing? By the way, all the funding was provided. We received $100 million plus for this debris removal. And our obligation then was to be the invoicing agent, because the federal and state government both have requirements that says they cannot spend their funds if other funds were available for this same purpose, called duplication of benefits. So the county is responsible for this duplication of benefit collection, although we do not receive any of those funds. Funds will be actually, I should say we receive these, but we pass them immediately to the federal and state agencies. We don't retain any of those costs. Our cost of the obtaining of the funds are actually covered, though, under the FEMA and state requirements, but none of the funds are actually retained. So the issue, in fact, we had some discussions on this. Since we don't keep these funds, since we don't normally do this type of activity, did it make sense for us to do this? Well, one, we were obligated as a grant recipient to do this. And secondarily, as I've learned, it's probably best that the county, which is in touch with the community, is actually the interface dealing with the public, because this is often hard for the public to understand, comprehend, and even when they comprehend and understand, they're frequently stressed financially and in other ways. It's probably better that there's a local resource they can deal with. And right now, since we don't do this type of work in Calaveras County typically, we ended up bringing on a contractor. Your board approved Tetra Tech to be the contractor based on their experience with Hurricane Sandy, Katrina, and other similar activities. They've got a broad base of activity. They had done the data recording for actually this cleanup. They're doing a lot of the activity that relates to actually the tree mortality, or not tree mortality, but the tree burn debris as well. So this is something that they have done quite well. They're working in the adjacent area here now, and they've been fairly successful at reaching nearly 700 of these 854 properties, making contact, of which we think that based on the information to date, nearly 2/3 of those have indicated that they do have some insurance to be covering some portion of this. It is clear and well known that the insurance coverage for debris removal does not nearly cover the actual cost of debris removal. The obligation of the property owner is limited to the debris removal specific amount they will be receiving from their insurance companies. And so, for instance, if the cost of the property was $100,000, but they had typically more like 5% of their total home coverage for maybe $15,000 in coverage, their liability would be capped at the 15% they would be receiving specifically for debris removal. And that is on the theory of they did not incur a cost for debris removal, so they probably were not entitled to retain that amount of dollars. And I will mention, although very few people did this, it was voluntary to participate in the program. So there were some folks that took it upon themselves to do their own cleanups at their own cost with their own insurance funds. Very, very few, though, because they found the cost far exceeded what was generally available to them. In many ways, the program has been quite successful in these regards, what I'm discussing. We had a very, very clear and comprehensive cleanup of most of these properties. That certainly doesn't mean that all parties are happy with the service and with the results. We do have a number of folks that rightfully were concerned that they either had too much or too little removed from their property. Have it on both sides. Some folks are saying, why did they take the concrete foundations? Others are saying, why didn't they pick up my fencing? The program was pretty much limited to dealing with potentially hazardous debris. This one was. It didn't pick up fencing. It didn't pick up all materials. It picked up mainly structural debris because of concerns for heavy metals, such as lead paint from the past, wiring, other sorts of materials that could have been contaminants, pesticides from garages, things like this. They also were concerned with asbestos. They were concerned with other sorts of things that are associated with structures. So therefore, this wasn't a comprehensive program to go and clean up all 40 acres of your property. They removed concrete because it was generally determined that heat-stress concrete could not be used for future building. And so that was one of the reasons why this issue was done, and there's a lot of removal there. It was one of the controversial issues. I bring this up because a number of the homeowners are now saying that, yes, I got some money, but no, you didn't do enough or you did too much, so we're not really willing to turn this money over to you to turn over to the state and federal government. And as a public health professional, I first thought this would be pretty straightforward. What I'm finding is it's not quite as straightforward. We've got legitimate concerns by homeowners. We've got any number of homeowners, because there's a potentially responsible party, they have attorneys. Their attorneys are telling them don't sign anything, or they're telling them to be very reluctant to sign anything, which sometimes interferes with us being able to get authorizations. We have insurance companies that are generally unwilling to deal with the government directly. They say our relationship is with our client. So we're hoping to do much more efficient work with the large insurance companies. So far, at least, there's been a lot of reluctance on their part to deal with us in that way, and it may be an appropriate response on their part, but it's taking more time than we'd hoped it would. So it's a lot of issues like that are coming up. The last issue, which I alluded to briefly, was the state gave us, about 6 months ago, gave us a per property cost. And then they added a note that said there's about $12 million in administrative costs that hasn't been factored in yet, and we will give that to you later. Well, later is not arrived yet. We were to have a meeting last week that was just recently postponed, and we're still waiting to find out the allocation. And I suspect it relates to taking $12 million in administrative costs and determining how it's spread across the 854 properties, whether it's per property or whether it's based on volume or whatever they may be trying to allocate those costs. But it's one that, again, until we get that number, we have been unable to then finalize any invoicing. In spite of not finalizing invoicing, though, we've collected nearly $500,000 from a number of clients who are simply saying, yep, I've got my check. It's pretty clear on the check what this is for. It's well under the dollar amount that your costs were, so I'll just give you my check now. And so we've, again, received quite a bit of those, and we'll continue to receive those. But we expect at the end of the day, there'll probably be somewhere in the range of $4 to anywhere up to $8 million of insurance proceeds that will be brought in through the program. So it's going to be a fairly significant amount of money, although, again, in the picture of a $100 million plus program, it's a pretty small percentage. We will be continuing to work on these issues. As I mentioned, Tetra Tech is in the building adjacent, or excuse me, in the adjacent room area here. Routinely meet with folks that have questions and issues. There's a hotline number. We hope to, again, expedite some of this. I had hoped that this would have been probably concluded by this time. We'll find out, again, as soon as we can get the information from the state. If we have issues with the state, I may call on your board for assistance or others in the county to assist on expediting this. But we're hoping to get those numbers soon so we can, again, proceed with a little more timeliness on this. We certainly don't want to get to the 2-year mark and not have concluded this. I will continue to give you a routine update on your board meetings as these may occur. It probably won't be this lengthy, I hope, but it'll be one where we'll give you the data as well as any issues that come up. Have any questions?
Supervisor Garrett.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mel, for the report. I know it's a very difficult project. It's taken us longer than we originally thought, as you pointed out, as we wait for this stuff. Do you have you mentioned the 2-year date as sort of the end date. Is there an end to this, or do we go into the last nickels collected? And when can we expect a contract extension from Tetra Tech? We're now getting used to seeing.
If it's any good news, the Tetra Tech contract, as approved by your board, we're generally on schedule, and I shouldn't say on schedule, but we're actually within budget, and we've moved the schedule in pieces. we've cut down certain activities, and we've expanded others where we've had to expand. So every place we've expanded, we've made a reduction elsewhere. One thing I think that we originally thought is we might have some protracted discussions over these disputes. What we've pretty much determined, it's not going to be in the county's authority or ability to resolve a dispute where someone says, gee, they damaged my driveway and I won't pay this. So what we're simply telling folks is that we're not in a position to actually resolve these sorts of issues. Most of them have an attorney. If they have an uncompensated loss, they potentially can deal with their attorney as he's dealing with the responsible parties, because it's actually a consequence of that loss. They can deal with that in that way potentially. But we will not be having something that we'll do other than we will be noting this. It will be their right, if they wish to not pay this duplication of benefit, but we will then just be reporting forward that this was the action that was entered to by the property owner.
So we'll make our best efforts, but we're not going to grind this to the last.
Exactly.
There's a stop to this.
That's right. And we've found that, again, initially we were thinking, as we were doing the cleanup, that we would pursue this to the very end of each property. And we're finding that that is going to be very, very impractical. It would take this, well, in fact, some folks are pretty resolute in their positions, and that's their right to be.
We've done our duty by FEMA.
Yeah, we'll do our due diligence, I think.
Further questions of Mel? Okay. Is there any other staff to make a presentation? Mr. Provis?
Jeff Krovitz, Public Works. That's a lot about debris. The first thing I'll talk about in terms of recovery from Butte Fire is debris removal, hazardous trees that were burned by the fire and are along county-maintained roads that threaten the traveling public. As of close of business on Saturday, of the estimated 8,400 trees that were approved in the initial program, let's see, where is my number? 8,079 are on the ground, so the vast majority are down. This leaves an estimate of about 100 trees left. These are highly technical trees. They require bucket, climbers, ropes, and a lot of care. They can also be adjacent to archaeological sites of great sensitivity or biological sites of great sensitivity. So they will necessarily be slow in their completion. To date, we have moved about 35,000 cubic yards of debris out of the burn area down to the debris management site in Wallace, and where approximately, where did I have that number? Almost 13,000 cubic yards have been processed and disposed of at the biomass plant in Jamestown. So the debris management site can process the material about twice as fast as the contractor can haul it in. So that's why they start later and will end a little bit after the program. It's estimated to complete the current scope of work, the last 100 trees, and then gather up the remaining amount of debris. Will take about 8 more weeks of groundwork and field work to complete the current scope of work. And then Tetra Tech, who is our project manager for this, will continue doing the insurance recovery for the hazard trees if there is any money left on insurance for those individuals who were insured. And that is expected to go through the end of this year. Any questions on the current program?
Thanks, Jeff. The Tetra Tech program, you mentioned they're sticking around to collect on insurance. That is separate from the project that Mel's working on?
Correct.
But it's the same dollars, right? Because it's would be in their insurance policy for debris removal?
Yes, essentially 2 programs competing for the same dollars.
Right. So I assume that Mel's a little bit ahead of you on this. So what's going to be left for us, for Tetra Tech to pursue?
We're assuming some to none. There's always a possibility that there were homes that did not burn, but still have insurance for debris removal that they're responsible for, and that might be recoverable. Hard to know until we actually get into it. But once again, this is a requirement of FEMA, the grantor, that we pursue this so that they are not granting funds that represent a duplication of benefits.
Right, a word that we've now all internalized. How's the right of entry going? Last time I asked you this last month and you gave me an update. How's it going now?
You're speaking about right of entry to get on a private property. Well, we reached out, had initially estimated about 307 parcels that were affected along county roads, and went out with numerous applications. Of those 307, I think it was, approximately 41 were direct refusals to sign, indicating that they would take care of the debris themselves. There were about 51 properties from which we heard nothing, and the balance of them we received right of entries from. And we have been processing trees off those properties actively since the last day of January of this year. So the actual physical work has been occurring through the winter, from the end of January through today, and it's continuing. And tree falling and debris collection work cannot occur when it's raining. That's a requirement of our NEPA clearance. But certain monitoring activities and monitoring mapping activities can occur in the rain because it's an individual walking around and drawing pictures. So that has continued every day that the program's been going. There's been a number of things going on that the county is going to pursue an expansion or an extension of this program with Cal OES and FEMA, and that's going to be for additional trees that have died since the initial survey. And there's 1,700 or so of those. Well, not of those, there's less than that. But there are also some trees on the parcels that we did not receive any response to. And for a number of reasons, we think that perhaps there were people who evacuated and didn't return and did not pick up, either through mail or through postings on the property, the notice of the right of entry. So we felt it was reasonable to give them a second shot at the program. We're not going to be reaching out to people who have already written us and given us refusal. And then there's been a number of, there are also some trees on 7 BLM parcels that county maintains roads through those parcels of about 400 trees that we are hoping could either be included in the federal program or included in a state program. So we'll be working forward with the state and federal government on expansion of the program. If they approve it, then the program will continue until we get those out. Public Works still estimates that there may be as many as 2,000 trees at the conclusion of this program that are still dead and standing that will have to be abated through another process without reimbursement. So it would be a code enforcement action to get those.
For the people who didn't provide right of entry for you?
They did not provide right of entry, and they haven't abated these hazard trees on their own. So this program, I anticipate, is going to be going on for a while. Any other questions on hazard tree?
That 2,000, I knew, the 2,000 trees you just mentioned, and that was one of the questions I wrote down. That is the estimate of trees on the properties that you were either denied or got no response from. That's your estimate of what is there.
That's the estimate for the trees on the properties that were denied only.
And there's addition to that, the ones that you got no response from?
Yes.
So it's more than 2,000 trees overall?
The way to look at it is it's approximately 18 or 1,900 trees that are on parcels that either we didn't hear from or have died since our initial surveys.
All right. Thank you.
And then on top of that, the additional up to 2,000. But we haven't actually started those surveys yet.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
We're also proceeding with the setting up road repairs, both the road repairs from the federal highway grants and from the FEMA grants. The emergency opening work has all been approved, and we're assembling billing for that to get reimbursement. One of our issues here is that, as the board knows, the roads are so narrow that putting multiple contractors out doing conflicting activities would be a very dangerous situation and a disturbing situation to the traveling public, so they necessarily must be sequential. And additionally, on many of the roads, the public assistance roads that FEMA is granting repair for, they are utilizing our federal aid eligible that Federal Highways is granting, so the main corridors in and out of the burn, Mountain Ranch Road, Railroad Flat, Jesus Maria, they are being utilized by all of the recovery contractors to move debris out of the burn area. So those roads are continuing to take a beating as we do these recovery activities. So we're working with our granting agencies to work out some of these issues.
Supervisor Garamendi.
Jeff, thank you again. Are we still on track to get this project going by the fire anniversary so we don't lose our funds?
Yeah, the plan is that at a minimum we would execute either force account or a small contract to do work where we feel we are approximately concluded with debris removal so that we have that milestone met.
Okay. Further questions? Mr. Forbes?
I'm not certain if this is one for you or possibly Mr. Knight, but it has to do with PG&E. They were supposed to be getting us the information on their trucks and the axles and all of that information for us. Have they done so, or are we still waiting?
I've made 2 requests and have not received any response, and that's both of PG&E and AT&T. So there might be other avenues to pursue, but I could continue to send the letters. They could continue to not respond.
Further questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any public comment on this issue? One more. Oh. Sharon, I'm sorry.
Sharon Torrance, Butte Fire Recovery Information Officer. I have on a weekly basis sent out the schedule that is provided to me by Phillips and Jordan as to what roads were going to be impacted by their vehicles, both gathering and cutting. I've also sent out a weekly update, both on in the Calaveras County website and have sent out Facebook posts and have had some really great response. Some over 1,000 hits on the Facebook page. Working with Phillips and Jordan has been amazing. Also Tetra Tech. When we had the incident week before last, working with their office back in, I believe, Florida. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. But working with their information officer on putting out a release on the incident itself was as easy as it could be considering the incident. So that's about all from information. I'm still getting calls from folks looking for answers, and so far have been able to push them in the right direction so that they can take care of whatever issue they have. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other staff to be presenting? Is there any public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to board. Madam Clerk, I need to interrupt you for a moment. Is there anybody here on Item number 22, Board of Supervisors, appointment of applicants.
Yes, there is.
Okay. Madam Clerk, go ahead and continue. Thank you.
Item 21 is to authorize the board chair to sign a letter of support regarding the use of dogs while hunting mammals as recommended by the Calaveras Fish and Game Commission. This item is requested to be withdrawn.
Okay.
Item 22 is the appointment of applicants to serve on various committees, commissions, advisory boards, and county service areas. We have applications for consideration for 3 groups. The first is the Hardwood Advisory Committee. This vacancy was advertised as part of the advertisement done on March 22nd, 2017. 1 vacancy for a term ending 12/31/18 for a member of the general public. An application has been received from James Van Zandt. The IHSS Advisory Committee has a position that was advertised on March 22nd, 2017 for 1 vacancy for a term ending 12/31/18 for a member of the general public. A application was received from Catherine Gonsalves. And lastly, the Law Library Board of Trustees. This vacancy was advertised as part of an advertisement on April 5th, 2017 for 1 vacancy for a term ending 12/31/17 for an attorney or general public member, and the application was received from Ann Pestalozzi.
Public comment? I'm sorry, any board comments?
Yeah, I'd like to introduce Jim. That's me on the hardwood. Jim, would like to stand up, wave or something?
Would you approach the podium if you would, sir? You can approach the podium if you'd like to speak.
I'd like to thank the Board of Supervisors for considering my application for the Hardwood Advisory Board, especially Supervisor Clapp. And if selected, I would look forward to working with the committee and preserving the county's hardwood resources. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, it's our common practice to vote on all 3 of these applicants at one time.
Yes, it is, unless there is some reason that the board would like to pull one to be acted on separately or individually.
Supervisor Garamendi.
I have to ask, what is our law library and why do we have one? If it's not part of the general library.
I think that would probably be better directed to county council.
We do have a law library. It's in this building, and it is a requirement that we have a level of a law library specific with all of the law books.
I mean, we have books.
We do. We have many law. Yes, we
do. Do our attorneys ever use them?
Sometimes it's open to the community. So many attorneys within the community use the law library, not the general law library, or not the general library.
Okay.
And it is here on campus, downstairs. Yeah, it's right below my office.
Interesting point. I've actually personally used it myself.
Same here.
I usually just go to the online versions.
Any further questions by the board? Any objection on voting on these applicants all in one motion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Supervisor Clapp, seconded by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it to the board for a vote. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries unanimously 5-0. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chair, can we hold on just a minute? I think Supervisor Garamendi would like to back up to the last item. He had a comment, I think, that he
Oh, I'm
wanted to
sorry, I
say.
didn't see that.
I just, a matter of politeness, but Supervisor Tofinelli and I were talking, and we didn't thank Lori and Calaveras Recovers during their report for all the hard work that they've done. So Lori, thank you very much, and the whole team that's working on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
So, Chair, I just want to know where you're at as far as our scheduling today. We are scheduled to take a break in 15 minutes. So do we think that the next item or items will take more than that time?
I do not believe it will. That's why I was inquiring on item number 22.
Okay, great.
Are these microphones on here? Yes.
You'll have to turn them on. So item 23 is from the Planning Department to adopt a resolution adopting the Atkins Calaveras County Floodplain Mapping Study and the U.S. Geological Survey LIDAR topographic mapping and adopting the Cosgrove Creek physical map revision and the countywide letter of map revision LOMAR case number 16-09-3078P and the FEMA revised flood insurance study and adopting the base flood elevations as best available data.
Thank you.
Deborah Lewis, Planner 3. As you all know, the Planning Department has been working with FEMA since roughly 2010 to resolve issues with the FEMA flood insurance rate maps for Calaveras County. In March of 2015, we ultimately executed a memorandum of agreement with FEMA, which outlined the ways that FEMA was actually going to revise the maps for the county. They did this by kind of a double-pronged process. Some of the maps were revised using a physical map revision process, or PMR, and other parts of the county were revised using a letter of map revision, or LOMAR process. So we began this process, and it started a multi-year regulatory timeline that included multiple draft map revisions. It included a statutory public review period, various public comment periods, and public appeal periods. And notices were published in the Federal Register. We published multiple notices in 2 local newspapers. There were a number of press releases. There were articles and interviews that were published in the newspapers. And there was, in addition, a statutory requirement that we do a direct mailing to all of the individuals who were potentially adversely affected by this action. So there were 2 rounds of direct mailings, a lot of follow-up telephone calls and emails. At this point, we have a log of roughly 400 different individuals that we have dealt with directly via phone calls, emails, follow-up mailings of maps. So there's been just a tremendous amount of activity, I think, in the last 4 or 5 years about this. Next slide. No, wait, no, that's a good one. This one, this is just an illustration of our, the FEMA flood insurance rate map panels. There are 37 of them in Calaveras County. 30 of them are large scale. 7 of them are smaller and allow us to zoom in and look more closely at the flood zones in the Valley Springs area, the Arnold area, and the Angels Camp area. So basically that's what this slide illustrates. This slide illustrates the map panels that were revised in the LOMAR process. There were 26 of them. They specifically excluded 6 high country panels. Those are the ones that are not shown in yellow here. Also, you can see the other area not shaded. You can go to the next slide if you want. This area was addressed with the physical map revision process. And actually, the reason for this was once we began negotiations with FEMA, we found out that they had been working for some time already in the Valley Springs area, specifically around Cosgrove Creek and its tributaries. That is very detailed mapping. That is boots on the ground mapping, that is compilation of existing flood levels and detailed engineering to generate base flood elevations in that general area. So it was interesting to find out. It's nice. That's an area that's had a lot of ongoing flooding, and it's the area where we have the best data now. Next slide. Okay, this one is just for fun. This is actually what a FEMA flood insurance rate map looks like. In a paper copy, they're very large, they're unwieldy, they're a little bit difficult to work with. The only things you can really see on this map are townships, sections, ranges, and streets. So it can sometimes be difficult to interpret these maps. Okay, now this one, and until we received our 2010 map update, all we had were the FEMA paper copies of the maps. And it was with the 2010 map update that we finally received digital copies of the maps that we could use in our GIS systems. This image here is the FEMA flood map that was issued in September of 1990. The flood zones are very limited. They included only the major creeks and rivers in the county. We had only 2,207 parcels countywide that had flood zones on them. Next slide. This is what the map looked like when it arrived in 2010. We now had more than 7,200 parcels included in FEMA flood zones. This is the map that included the Department of Water Resources flood awareness zones. We originally received these maps in paper copy. FEMA followed up with a digital copy, and they followed up some months later with the aerial photographs that went with this digital map. So it was kind of an evolving process. It took us a while to figure out how problematic these maps actually were. You can go to the next slide. And this one is a lot harder to see, for which I'm very grateful. These are the maps that are going to become effective on May 17th of this year. As you can see, there's been a significant reduction in the aerial extent of the FEMA flood zones, and many of the flood zones have been completely removed from the map. Other flood zones are significantly smaller, and they are confined to the canyon bottoms in the county. The next slide might show this a little better. This is a side-by-side of the 2010 and 2017 FEMA flood map in the Jenny Lind area. The map on the right, if you look at all of the pink zones, those are the zones that were completely removed from the map. The remainder of the zones are, it's a little harder to see in this image, they are narrower. They are better confined to the canyon bottoms. Consistently, when we look at the new maps, we see that most of our residents know not to build too close to the rivers, too deep into the canyon bottoms. So with the shrinking of the FEMA flood zones, a lot of residences that were close to a flood zone are now completely removed from any flood hazard at all. What's the next one?
Ma'am, I'm going to unfortunately interrupt you here. I just want everybody to understand that we will continue till 11:30, and at that time we're going to be taking a scheduled 2-hour break, but we will continue if we have to come back after that time, just so everybody understands that. Okay? Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is actually the recommendation for this agenda item, and we acknowledge and adopt the Atkins Calaveras County Floodplain Mapping Study and the U.S. Geological Survey LIDAR topographic mapping, which created the base map that this mapping was put on. We will adopt both the Cosgrove Creek physical map revision and the countywide letter of map revision, the LOMAR. And an interesting point of discussion here, this mapping gave us base flood elevations. That's the height to which floodwaters are going to rise in a 100-year flood. For the most part, the county did not have that information before. This information is not, it's not engineered, it's not exact, but what this comes as is best available data. And if the county adopts these base flood elevations as best available data, it allows us to use them as though they were FEMA base flood elevations if we choose to do so. If we make a determination that a certain base flood elevation will be helpful It will allow somebody to construct a residence. It will give them the data they need to build their floor elevation at a height above the floodwaters. They can do that. And if it turns out that we don't deem the base flood elevation to be accurate enough, we have the option of not using it. The FEMA regulations say if you have best available data and it works, use it. If you don't, you're free to ignore it. So I'm excited that we now have an option to assist people with constructing residences and building near FEMA flood zones that we didn't have before. So that's basically my presentation.
We often have the opportunity to use go through a process called out as shown. So if someone comes in with a building permit and we look at the maps and it looks close, we can look at that data and say it's not in based on the elevations of their building permit application. So we can provide an out as shown documentation that assists the landowner, the builder, with the FEMA flood requirements.
Okay. Have we done this prior?
We've been doing this for some time, but this gives us much better information to be able to use that. And this resolves a long, ongoing problem since going back to 2010. The prior board directed us to do this. We worked with FEMA. It was a struggle at first, but we finally got them to agree that the maps that we were required to use were inaccurate, and this satisfies that problem. We've removed several thousand people from an unnecessary flood insurance requirement. One point we did want to make was that column maps showed sort of the upcountry portions of the county was not included in this mapping change, primarily because there was very little private land other than timberland up there. There is an area, Tamarack, that shows that has a flood zone portion in it. FEMA did not make that change primarily because it was one very small portion of the area within the overall panel, and the primary area that was previously affected by the flood maps, we're already in the process of correcting that through a letter of map amendment, which was processed sort of concurrently, but ahead of this overall process. And so I know Mr. Bray has been here. We've communicated with him for some time now about his desire to have that map panel changed. Our position is it's really unnecessary. He has a documentation to show that his property is out of the floodplain. We're prepared to provide him additional copies of that if he needs it. But the letters of map amendment have been approved by FEMA for his property. He is not in the flood zone, and it's unnecessary to spend thousands of dollars more in amending that map panel when that map. Now, if someone looks at that panel, it's going to show the band of blue across the property. So if you're trying to sell the property or there is insurance issues, but the documents, the letter of map amendment, provides that certificate that shows his property is out of the floodplain.
Thank you. Questions by the board of staff? Mr. Bray, we have 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Now, wait a minute. I'm going to give you an option. You can start your presentation now, and then if it exceeds the 5 minutes that we have remaining, I'm going to let you come back after our 2-hour period. But I want to make sure that you're able to hear the explanation of staff. I know we have some difficulty in that area. I do too. But I just want to make sure you understand that. And I'm going to give you the option of presenting now or coming back at 1:30 when we reconvene. So,
Chair, I would just like to clarify that I'm understanding that we still have a 3-minute time limit for comments, or are you extending it to 5 minutes?
I am extending this case for 5 minutes because of the presentation and the difficulty we may have audibly. And I just want to make sure everybody's got an even playing field here and able to comprehend and hear what's happening.
I just want to make
Me
sure
included.
I understood.
You want to start now, sir, or would you like to wait till after?
Just a second.
Okay. See my reasoning?
Okay. Thank you for the 5 minutes. That helps. I have a package here which I'll pass out, which includes some of what I'm going to say here, but also a lot of other information which you might find useful in tracking what's really happened over the years with this map problem. And it's been going on since 2008. So,
This is
I'm
a FEMA
Derek
map.
Gray, by the way, owner of
Okay.
Tamarack Lodge, excuse me. First of all, I've been very concerned about the fact that Tamarack and the high countries have been ignored. They've not been considered as part of this LOMA process. It's been promoted as a county-wide LOMA, but it's not, because the 6 parcels in the high country were not included. The FEMA maps at Tamarack are still incorrect. You can pull up the FEMA maps and you'll still find the creek and shown in the wrong position, flowing up and over Highway 4. If you can believe that, you'll believe anything. The MOA, which was dated, I believe, 24th of March 2015, included a comment about our property, that FEMA is in the process of evaluating the data for Mr. Derek Bray's property to understand different potential map change options. Yet, I've really not received any results from that evaluation, so I'm always puzzled as to what's going on. It seems like it falls into a black hole. The resolution makes many references to best available data. Well, but really only considers the Atkins and LIDAR as being relevant. There's lots of other things that are relevant, like I'm sure quite a lot of people like myself have had to file LOMAs based on the incorrect maps to get the properties taken out of flood zones. And that data is by far the most accurate, so it should really be included in any LOMA evaluation and determining of the new flood zones. The recent communications regarding LOMA with the staff, well, they seem to be a little conflicting. Maybe they've explained them a little bit here, but one was the absent the Atkins study, LIDAR data, etc. A LOMA cannot be prepared for our area.
Mr. Bray, Mr. Bray, how much time do we have on this 5-minute present?
2 minutes.
Okay, continue, sir.
Okay.
Continue.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Why were those panels not included in the first place? There's a good, that's a fundamental question. Why were they excluded? It doesn't make sense to me. This is supposed to be a county-wide solution. The second comment I got was, our position is that the flood map issues at Tamarack have been previously resolved through prior documents accepted by FEMA. I'm not exactly sure what those documents are, but I'm sure they refer to a lot of the work that I've done with respect to a letter of map amendment. And your property is out of the floodplain. Neither FEMA nor the county feel the need to process a LOMA, L-O-M-A, map revision. If we accept those comments and the Tamarack maps have not been changed, we need that written statement from the county and FEMA that will be needed to the effect that the Tamarack properties are in no danger of flooding. And in the package you've got, I've drafted a statement that I think could be used, but I think it should be made available on a general basis to people like real estate agents, potential buyers, insurance companies, financial institutions, and future owners of the property.
30 seconds.
Okay? They will all require that. It shouldn't have to be that we have to request something every time that we need it. It should be a letter that's generally available, and I would like a copy of that. And I've drafted something that you could use. You may not want to use it, but I think it's relevant. Thank you.
Mr. Bray, we're going to continue this at 1:30 when we come back in session. Will you be able to make that 1:30?
I'm afraid not. This is dragging on too long. I have to get back. It's 3.5-hour drive by car.
Madam Clerk, can we extend 5 to 10 minutes? Or are we on that tight of a schedule?
The only thing I can say is that it's up to you. We have 85 entries to get done in 2 hours. So just letting you know.
Okay, I'm going to give this 3 more minutes. Is that your presentation, sir?
Yes, I think my order has something to say, and I think it's relevant.
Okay, we'll entertain it, but keep in mind we have 3 minutes. 5 minutes. That's correct. We'll have to extend 5 minutes.
I think a minute and a half might do it. Vicki Johnson, I'm Derek Bray's daughter. I also live and work up at Tamarack. I heard very clearly what the planning department stated about the situation with the mapping and the parcels and the LOMAR, and understand that they are in the process of, it sounds like, if I'm correct, if I can ask you the question, that you will be providing individual letters to homeowners who need to have that clarification, as the blue line clearly is not in the correct manner. I live up there and look out the window every day, so we know that there is no river up there. It's just a matter of the proper documentation, so that if someone who is looking to buy a property can have information clearly accessible to them, so that if there is further commercial development or if the lodge changes ownership, that there is not the confusion with the flood zoning or the LOMA situations. That's really the main part that my father is trying to put across, is that he does have a letter that he can have that is readily accessible to pertinent people who are looking at future development or ownership up in the Tamarack area, as well as there are other parcels who are involved up there, as the dots show. They also want to be able to have access to that.
Okay. Mr. Mauer, do we have that capability?
Yes, we would work with FEMA to provide an out as shown letter for those who requested it. So if someone came in and we could clearly determine, so the white dots are the approximate location of existing structures. For the most part, you can see that they're out, and the detailed analysis that we have for that specific area, we can clearly determine that they're not affected by flooding potential. We can provide that documentation to FEMA, who would then issue the out as shown letter.
Is that acceptable, ma'am?
It sounds appropriate, yes.
Okay.
And
Mr.
so
Bray, are you acceptable with that?
Not quite.
Well, tell you what, if it's not, we'll have to come back at 1:30.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm sorry to put that on you, but unfortunately, we have to take our lunch break and our recess right now.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're back in session. Madam Clerk.
So we will continue with item 23, which is from the Planning Department, to adopt a resolution adopting the Atkins-Calaveras County floodplain mapping study and the U.S. Geological Survey LIDAR topographic mapping, and adopting the Cosgrove Creek physical map revision and the countywide letter of map revision LOMAR case number 16-09-3078P, and the FEMA revised flood insurance study, and adopting the base flood elevations as best available data.
Thank you very much. Apparently, the appellant has had to return, so I think we can discuss this with the decisions with the information we have. I'm going to call for public comment on this issue right now. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and questions. Any questions, Supervisor Tofinelli, your lights on?
I would just move this item, Mr. Chair.
Okay. No further discussions. Motion made by Supervisor Tofinelli. Looking for second by Supervisor Clapp. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries 5-0, unanimous. Madam Clerk.
Item 24 is from the Planning Department to introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance amending 2 sections of Chapter 15.06, Flood Damage Prevention, of the Calaveras County Code, and to adopt base flood elevations determined from the Atkins study, and to remove references to the Community Development Agency and Director of Community Development, and replace with references to the Planning Department and Planning Director as the FEMA Floodplain Administrator. Authorize staff to publish a summary of the ordinance before the second reading as required by law.
Mr. Maurer.
Don't really have anything further to add. The recommendation sort of speaks for itself. This is sort of the follow-up to the action that we took before. It does a little bit of minor cleanup in the ordinance itself. It formally incorporates these new map amendments into our flood ordinance, and it becomes official when the final adoption of the ordinance is done at the next meeting.
Okay.
I would like to add one thing that's really not on the agenda, but
right.
Supervisor Oliveira, I know that you're aware of this, but Deborah here has been nominated as Floodplain Manager of the Year by FEMA for all of her hard work that she has done on this program, as well as her assistance with hundreds of other citizens in getting them through the federal bureaucracy of getting floodplain clearance in many cases. So I just wanted to publicly make that known to you as well as the rest of the public, that she has really done an outstanding job in assisting the citizens of this county in getting through the maze of federal bureaucracy.
Thank you, Mr. Maurer. And I'd like to add, I received numerous phone calls and emails about the performance of Deborah, and I would personally like to congratulate her for her hard work and knowledge in this field. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I say a few words?
You may, sir.
Well, Deborah, you've been at this since 2010. You've been around, and you know when we started this to get it and how difficult it was, and you persevered and stayed in there. I really want to thank you so much. In the presentation the other day when I poked my head in and we went through, it just showed. You knew exactly where to go, what to do. You had all the information right there. Absolutely wonderful job you've done, and I also want to congratulate you on the fine job that you did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any further comments by the board? Any public speaking on this issue? Any public comment?
Bill McManus. Excuse me. Going back to the time of 2009 and 2010, when a lot of people were upset with information they were getting based on FEMA flood maps, there was an individual who was not part of county government. He's a private individual, smart guy, looked into it for the benefit of the people of Calaveras County, his neighbors. He wasn't personally affected by it, and found out how wrong the FEMA maps were. He spent his own time and money and effort to bring this subject to light, that the FEMA maps were nowhere near accurate. That gentleman's name is David Tuno, and he spent a lot of time getting this before the board, before the public, helping people out because of the insurance requirements they were being forced to comply with that weren't legitimate. He saved the taxpayers of this county literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance premiums through his personal, unselfish efforts. And I just want to add his name. It's an historical footnote, but I wanted to add his name as one of the pioneers in getting this thing straightened out, just for the record. And today he would not accept any thanks if you tried to give it to him. That's just the way he was. A great individual, and did a service for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prince. Any further public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move this item.
Moved by Supervisor Tofinelli. Seeking a second.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Garamendi. No public comment. Okay, after not seeing any, I'll bring it back to the board for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed indicate by saying no. Motion carries 5-0 unanimous. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Item 25 is from the Planning Department to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution upholding the Planning Commission's denial of the appeal of the Planning Director's denial of commercial cannabis registration 2016-979 for Miguel Gutierrez on 7977 Goodell Road, Paloma, APN 016-003-109, file 2016979.
Mr. Chair?
Supervisor Garamendi.
If I may, I need to recuse myself from this. I run cattle next door to this site and just feel I couldn't have been an impartial judge on this panel.
Accepted. Thank you, sir.
I'll slip out back for announcements.
Thank you. Mr. Maurer. I'm sorry, Mr. Maurer, or?
I'll be making the presentation with me as Ethan Turner from the County Counsel's Office. I see that Mr. Gutierrez is not in the audience. I don't see there's a representative for him either. I have a fairly detailed presentation, but I think I will dispense with that. Just briefly go over the issues that the Planning Commission raised. This was an appeal of cannabis registration number 2016-384. We noticed through site inspection a number of discrepancies, violations of the terms of the urgency ordinance. These included camping on site, inadequate fencing, unhoused generators, other violations of the code. They were given an opportunity to fix it. They did not. Went back out there earlier this year, found that they had done additional new grading, and all of these led to the denial of the registration. It was appealed, went to the Planning Commission. The appellant did not appear at the appeal hearing. However, he did appeal that decision to you. He's not here again today, and so our recommendation is that you uphold the Planning Commission's decision to deny the appeal, which would therefore uphold the decision to deny the original registration by staff.
Any further, Mr. Any comments by the board?
Over what period of time, Peter, was these site inspections done?
Original site inspection was done in August of last year, August 23rd. They inspected again in January, and further inspections were done in March.
And at no time was there any attempt by the appellant to make any corrections to the original inspection?
None that we're aware of. I mean, some were clearly continuing violations. The trailer that people were camping in, where they're only allowed to camp for a period of 14 days, is still on the site when it was first noticed back in August. That clearly violates the terms of the ordinance. Number of continuing violations.
Mr. Klepp, do you have, before the top, do you have any comments?
Yes, I have a question. Now, are we just denying his appeal, but what about the grading that's done there? Are they going to be having to do an engineer fill or get an engineer plan for as-built? Or, I mean, I see all these comes in, I see these pictures. I know that it's over 50 yards of dirt moved, and we take the crop up, but we're still we still have the mess and the problem there. Are you guys citing them to make them
They
correct
have been
those?
cited. If the grower is not the landowner and the grower bails, then the landowner is responsible.
I have a couple of comments, questions, Mr. Maurer.
Sure. Mr. Turner.
Mr. Turner. Have we determined whether or not, what type of communication was sent to the appellant? Was it a letter, registered letter?
Registered letter. He clearly received it because he filed an appeal. The date of the appeal, he was notified of that in writing.
Okay.
Plenty of opportunity to appear.
Was this land leased, rented, or owned by the appellant?
It's owned by a company that is the same name as his business. So his application was in his own name as an individual, but he also filed under a business name of the Atslon Group, and that is the landowner.
Is that a corporation?
Yeah, LLC, Limited Liability Corporation.
Mr. Turner?
Yeah.
The remediation process, should the board actually uphold this appeal? I'm take that back. Deny this appeal? What is code compliance next move on this?
Code compliance has already issued a stop work order and red tag the site. The next step would be to issue a citation order to abate. And then that would be followed by administrative fines, but those administrative fines would not be for illegal cannabis cultivation, which is $1,000 a day. It'd be for ordinary code enforcement violations. Those citations could then be appealed to the Administrative Hearing Board, which would then make recommendations to this board, and then an order to abate would then issue an abatement warrant would follow. So this is just very preliminary stages of remedying this site.
And it is the code compliance procedure to proceed should this board deny this appeal. Is that correct?
This appeal is merely of the planning director's decision to deny the application. The code enforcement track is an entirely separate track.
Okay. Do you have any involvement in that?
I would not be involved in ordinary code enforcement. I'm only involved in code enforcement activities with respect to marijuana.
So the only way that would change would be if they start growing again this season, and we found plants out there, and then you'd be in violation of the cannabis cultivation provisions.
Okay, Mr. Maurer, should this board deny this appeal, could you see the code compliance is advised of this?
They definitely will be.
All right.
We keep them appraised of all actions on appeals.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there any public comment on this?
Yes, Bill McManus. Can I make a request that in the PowerPoint presentation in the packet, there was a photograph, it's figure 2. I have a question about that I couldn't make copies of this. Actually, I have 2 questions, that's all I have.
Stay right there, please. Mr. McManus, stay there.
Okay. He just asked me to...
No, just, Mr. McManus, I believe...
I got you, Mike.
All right, no, there's something that's something that can be handled personally with Mr. Turner and Mr. Maurer. How does it pertain to this issue before the board?
You did what?
How does that pertain to the issue before the board?
Okay. I have 2 questions.
Okay, I'm going to listen to your second one.
Okay. In the discussion/summary of the agenda submittal, it shows that the applicant, and there's a couple dates that show up here, applied for his application on July 12th, 2016. It was my recollection that June 30th, 2 weeks prior to that, was the end of the application period without exception. So my first question is this date true? And if so, under whose authority was an application accepted after the deadline? My second question is, and looking, it's kind of hard to see there, but I've got a close up here. What is that all about? I see elevated land, gravel, stakes, wire. Around the front, you see trenches with a dam at the back, brackish water on the front. It's on the left-hand side of that platform of mound. Evidence of flow coming down from the corner at the bottom of the picture, and it's strewn with empty containers. Now, is that the typical pot grow? Or did anyone take a look at this? Is this something that should have been taken care of? I mean, it looks nasty to me. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a very innocent way they do things. I don't know. But it looks real bad. So my question is, was that ever checked out?
Mr. Maurer, was that information presented to the Planning Commission when it was his appeal was denied? Or was this photograph taken into consideration by that board?
This photograph was presented to the Planning Commission. This represents the illegal grading activity that was occurring on the site. This was a drying facility, apparently, that he was preparing. And this is clearly an example of the illegal, unauthorized grading activities that the ordinance was trying to prevent.
And this was documented in the board packet as a result of this appellant
Yes.
hearing towards the Board of Supervisors,
This
correct?
this was included as an example of the illegal, unauthorized activity occurring on this property.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. Commander?
That's question two. The first one was the application date. I don't know if there was a typo on the submittal.
I can respond to that if you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
I'd be glad to hear it.
So on the last day, on June 30th, we had people lined up outside the door. We took their application packet and their name and contact information, told them to come back because we could not process them all on that last day. And so the last couple of days, we actually were saying, make sure we documented that they were in line and prepared to submit on that date. And then we called them and say, okay, come on in. And it took us about 2 weeks to come through that huge backlog. That's why the actual application was filed on July 12th, but they were in line, prepared to submit on the 30th. We just did not have the ability to handle the numbers that came in on those last couple days.
Okay. Was that information discussed in the original appellant hearing by the Planning Commission?
I don't know if it was really germane to the hearing. It was just a question from the public, and just wanted to let you know, let him know that was the reason why. This issue has come up several times in the past. We've responded, and just in case there was a question in your minds, I wanted to ensure that you were aware of why there were some. We accepted the applications, or they were actually taken in on last day, but they were here and prepared to submit, but unable to because of our lack of resources.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maurer. County Council. Is the board to consider the information described by Mr. Maurer regarding the date, or is that something that this board would not hear, seeing it wasn't presented to the appellate board of the Planning Commission?
If it's new information, the board can either not consider it. If it doesn't affect your ultimate decision, then you don't have to consider it. It was, in fact, presented. It was part of the board packet. It was part of the information. I believe that I heard you say that it was part of the information that was brought forward to the Planning Commission. It wasn't necessarily discussed, but it was part of the record.
Right.
And if it's part of the record, then that is part of the record that's in front of this board to consider in this appeal hearing. So yes, the information is something that you can consider in making your decision.
Okay. Thank you, Council.
You're welcome.
All right. Any further comment from the public? I'll bring it back to the board for discussion. And who had their light on first? Supervisor Mills?
Your light's on. Only because it's happened to me personally, is that when there is a notice of violation, a stop work order, red tag, whatever it might be, that is creating environmental damage, I think that it would be important for the Sheriff's Department also to be aware that that is in existence, and as of this point, it has not been. And I think it'd just be very helpful when they make their responses to complaints from the citizens that they are aware that those stop work orders are in place. I think it would change the strategy a little bit. So just a point.
Supervisor Clapp, did you have a comment?
I made mine earlier.
Okay. Seeing no more comments, I entertain a motion.
I'd move this item for denial.
Okay. Supervisor Mills motion the item for denial, seconded by Supervisor Tofinelli. Any further public comment? I'll bring it back to the board for a vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion passes 4 with one recuse. Thank you very much, Mr. Maurer. Mr. Turner? Recuse. Madam Clerk. Hi.
You want to wait a moment for Supervisor Garamendi to come back?
Could you hold on a minute?
Please. I know Clyde doesn't have a box, but he walked out the door to get it to me.
we'll take a moment. I will be in recess for 5 minutes. Well, I hope that wasn't a hot dog.
I was just watching. What is it, like a 3-minute lag?
Okay, we're back in session.
Supervisor,
Go ahead.
Supervisor announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 53232.3D, this is the time for board members to report on meetings attended on behalf of the county and to carry out their duties as a county supervisor.
I will start with Supervisor Tofinelli, if you will. I know you have to catch a plane.
I have nothing to report, Mr. Chair, other than aloha.
Supervisor Clapp.
I attended last Thursday Area 12 meeting, and Common Ground accepted a car from, I think it was 27 pot farmers. And so we tabled the item as a federal loan. So we tabled that until next month, so we get time from county council and stuff if we can actually accept the car at the same time we're doing that loan. I got a lot of face mail on it. People think I'm trying to take their chickens away and not feed old people. So I checked with Tim on it, and Area 12 did a press release on the matter, and it will be coming back next month, and hopefully we'll know. As soon as I find out from Area 12's attorney, I will have them contact Megan, and she can review it. So that's about it. That's the only trouble I got you guys in this week.
Okay. Supervisor Garamendi.
I'm for old people and chickens. I'm for old people and chickens. Busy week activities with the RCRC had a board meeting in Tehama County, which I attended. We toured a lot of local businesses, which was really interesting on how they're developing their rural economy. How we had a lot of common issues that we discussed as a group, from cannabis to tree mortality to education in rural areas. It's always nice going to these meetings because you find out we're not alone. We're not the only people facing these challenges. Attended an UMRA meeting at Pardee as well on the 28th, a mental health board meeting on the 2nd. And then last week I went down as a member of RCRC and lobbied the Capitol on some of our rural issues that we've always talked about here: tree mortality, cannabis, higher education, community colleges, and how people up here can access education. I think community colleges is something I'd like to take up this summer with this board and sort of begin talking to you all about the challenges that we face and maybe some of the opportunities that are out there. And then we had building official interviews on Friday. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Mills.
Yes, on Tuesday, April 25th, attended Utica Water and Power meeting, talking about their power price and values under the REMAP project. April 27th, Thursday, attended the Destination Angels Camp breakfast in the morning for a project review, and attended the Calaveras Humane Society dinner that evening. April 28th, Friday, met with staff over the FEMA maps. May 1st, Monday, attended interagency emergency management training and met with staff to discuss status of our bus system as it relates to the budget. May 2nd, Tuesday, attended IEMC training again put on by FEMA with the assistance of Cal OES. Wednesday, May 3rd, attended IEMC training and reviewed scenarios, attended a Council of Governments meeting. They're going to be bringing up a complete review of projects from COG in their next meeting, so I think it's important for us to be prepared for that. And May 4th, Thursday, attended IEMC training wrap-up. May 5th, closed session interviews on Friday. May 6th, Saturday, attended the third annual Vintage Vallecito event with a community dinner in the evening, and attended the Copperopolis Lions Club Hot Copper Car Show. So at the end of this, I'd like to poll the board for a couple of items as well.
Okay. I attended the Calaveras County Fair kickoff dinner on the 26th. That was a great event. Also attended the Humane Society Appreciation Dinner with Supervisor Mills. Great organization, and I have been asked to be part of their consultation process for the new building, which I'm very proud and honored to be asked that. Apparently there's a consulting firm that is in charge of that process, and I'll be meeting with them in the next week or so. I have well, it's not really an issue problem. We have a situation in my district regarding some local businesses and some parking regulations that we're addressing. I'm happy to say that we've been able to come together and at least sit at the table and talk about it. And that's an ongoing situation. I did attend last night a mixer in the Arnold area by the Chamber of Commerce and was able to address our local business folks. And I want to welcome and thank the folks that came all the way from Valley Springs to Arnold to attend that in the Chamber. And it shows that our Chamber is growing and it's doing a good thing. We'd like to see that happen. On Monday, I attended a filming, if you will, for this damage up in District 3 by KPIX Channel 5 in San Francisco at the invitation of Chief Mike Johnson. They had sent a crew up to actually film the damage. They interviewed Chief Johnson, they interviewed Forest Service, they interviewed myself, and that actually airs, I believe, this coming Wednesday. I do have the link for that. And it was a good chance for folks in the Bay Area to see the extent of our damage up in this area, up in our foothills in our county. Hopefully that'll help in our FEMA meetings that were scheduled for Thursday, I understand, to review our storm damage and specifically the issue of our Blagan Road Bridge in my district. Yesterday I attended the Governor's Task Force on Tree Mortality in Sacramento. Basically, we haven't seen a lot of progress, if you will, but they're really engaged in the insurance portion of that as far as finding ways to fund that for the private lot owners. We met with the various agencies, CAL FIRE, PG&E, Caltrans, Forest Service, and I just want to ensure everybody is aware of what's happening and we're going forth, but unfortunately the wheels turn slowly. I will not be able to attend the local tree mortality meeting tomorrow scheduled, but Supervisor Garamendi will be attending that, and he's got my information from the Sacramento meeting from yesterday. And I also was able to participate in a very short period of time with the Peace Office Memorial Services in Sacramento, and that was very impressive. We had police officers from all over the state of California and even farther away. So that's about it. Supervisor Mills, you had a poll?
Yes, it was important from COG that we received community letters of support from districts 3 and 4 on the FLAP grant application for the Wagon Trail project, and the due date on that is this Friday. So we need to probably step up and say whether or not we are going to offer a letter of support for the funding, federal lands project funding. And it's not on the agenda, so I don't know quite how we want to do that, but I just was asking if the board would be interested in having that discussion.
Madam Clerk, didn't we issue a letter of support on the board?
I believe so. I believe that was on the March agenda. I don't know which meeting off the top of my head, but my understanding is that what is requested is a personal letter of support from District 3 and District 4.
Right.
Not from the board. The board has already provided that.
Okay, so a reminder. Secondly, there is a new bill going through Congress. It's H.R. 23. It has to do with the federal control of the federal water projects in California and how they want to disassociate themselves from state water projects. So you might want to look up H.R. 23, but it brings up another point, and that is legislative oversight. This board, I think, can be very helpful in providing letters of support or letters of opposition on specific issues that will affect this county, and so we should be keeping our ears open for issues that are coming up that we might be able to provide some influence and direction on in the future. I know that it was brought up previously, but I would like to continue the consideration whether the CAO should be given the authority to hire and fire non-elected department heads. I think that giving him that power will provide us with a better and broader range, and so at some point, hopefully this board will consider it. The last item is concern about having 1791 not included in the proposed ban ordinance and what effect that will have on us, because at the end of 2017, if we haven't done something about that, that could very well play into the state controlling our future on dispensaries. So I'd like to know whether or not the board would be interested in including 1791 or portions of it in the discussion regarding our proposed ban ordinance. As we had stated, we were going to have a ban to only comply with the minimums that were required by state law. And those are my concerns.
If you're pulling the board, I'd be for the last two that you just mentioned.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Council, we have a meeting scheduled for the 30th of May, a workshop. Is that the proper venue to discuss this?
Is it the 30th or the 31st? The 30th is a night meeting, and certainly if the board directs staff to put it on that agenda, staff can agendize that for discussion on the 30th. Just so the board is aware, I will not be there for the night meeting.
I seem to recall Supervisor Tofinelli, you indicated you wanted to have a workshop. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Would that fall under that realm, Council? A workshop regarding the draft proposal?
Certainly, if the board wants to hold a study session, whether it be an action item or just a presentation for direction, that can certainly be included as an item for that meeting. The direction would just have to be given to staff to prepare for that item.
Yeah, I believe that direction's already been made, hasn't it, CAO?
Yeah, if I could just add, my suggestion was that to make that meeting the most productive possible, that we put together basically an agenda where we structure the first hour to talk about county impacts, department impacts. Then we have the second hour to talk about either, and again, I think we can go for a number of different items depending on what the board would like to see, but issues on what we might be missing from the ban ordinance, and then open up a time for public comments on broad range of either pro or against, and hopefully structure that so that people can talk to specific elements that they want to address. My feeling is just based on how broad this topic can go, having an agenda at least to provide some structure will at least help with flow and make sure we don't run until 3 a.m.
That's good. Supervisor Tofinelli, you need to talk, I know.
The light's on. If it's okay with the board, I would like to spend some time with Tim to structure that portion presented, since I asked for the study session to be here, and I can go through with him and structure how we can get that accomplished, and where we're trying to focus and go to. If that's
Any
fine.
comments by the board?
No problem.
Do we need a poll, Council? Or can we just make that assignment?
It's just one of us.
Yes or no?
You can certainly poll the board
Okay.
and have Supervisor Tofinelli work with
All right.
CAO.
Okay, I don't think we need a poll on this. I think we can just make the assignment. Supervisor Mills, as to your comments on, I guess, 1791, can that be covered? Did that answer your
Well, I think that as long as that is included in the discussion, so we don't miss that piece, because there are some gaps, and I think that 1795 does speak to some of it, but doesn't speak to all of those gaps. And we just need to be sure we have a complete and thorough discussion about this whole issue
Okay.
going forward.
All right. I think that's pretty clear. Anybody have any confusion on that? I think we're all in agreement. Any further from the board on that issue? Staff, any reporting out?
I would just add, echoing what Red Cross mentioned this morning, last week's FEMA training I felt was really beneficial. I think it brought a lot of departments together to talk about communication, things that we should be focusing on, lessons learned. Yesterday at the department head, we did a roughly 45-minute debrief where we could go around through each of the departments, kind of discuss takeaways, concerns, and what we want to look at on a going forward basis. I know we're coming up on budget, but I also think it's relevant to the budget discussion. I'd like to schedule in the next few meetings sometime an opportunity to bring the OES program forward to the board to discuss structure, staffing, and kind of look at a broader framework of how we're managing emergency operations across the county.
All right. I have no objection to that. CEO, thoughts? Madam Clerk.
So I just wanted to thank everybody for participating in Government Center Frog Jump today. We had a record number of 85 jump entries, and the entry fees are designated to go to the Humane Society and Friends of Calaveras Animal Services. I wanted to particularly thank CAO Lutz for being our master of ceremonies today and moving things along. I was not optimistic that we would get everyone done in 2 hours, and you did better than that. I'd also just like to thank the members of the Spirit Committee and the volunteers who did the cooking, did the setup, did everything that they could to make it a great event. So we couldn't have done it without them.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, no further comments. We are adjourned. I'll open back up for public comment.
Good afternoon,
Hang
Vicki.
on, let's get everybody ready.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Vicki Reinke, Angels Camp. I have a question based on what was just discussed, because I'm not real sure. Okay, the process for approving the ban ordinance. Okay, I remember we were waiting for the ordinance to come out, which it has. We were waiting for the EIR to come out, which it has. Now there's certain dates that we, as the public, can make comment. And then my understanding was it was supposed to then go to the Planning Commission for their review and their recommendations. And then I want to make sure I have this, but then it goes back to the planning department to fix it, no. So then it just goes from the planning department with any of their comments to the board. Is that right? So anyway, my one question is the workshop. How does that work in? Because usually a workshop will take public comment, but it affects something. So what is that workshop going to affect, I guess, is my question.
Well, I'm calling for a study session, and normally study sessions, there's no action items on it. It's just a study session to give out information. I think we're all interested in the impacts that the urgency ordinance and where we are now has on all departments. And to go into part of this, and so we have all that information when this all gets back to us. Plus, there is some time here for public comment to come forward and give their statements on what either regulations or what else they'd like to see in the ordinance, and give them an opportunity to come forward and give their thoughts on how they would envision the ordinance to be finalized. Okay. So, but there's a lot of things. I think Peter will be involved in presenting some of the things, the ordinance.
Could you push his mic forward so we can, there it is. Sorry, Gary.
Going forward, so everybody understands it. I think the presentation of, everybody reads things, and everybody reads things differently, even though the same words are there. We want a presentation here so people are aware of what it says, what we're going about doing, and an opportunity to at least come up to the microphone like you are and give their 2 cents on what they would like to see the ordinance look like. That's my thoughts on it. And perhaps there would be, a lot of good ideas on crafting into this thing. I know a lady last meeting stood up where you are near the end of the meeting like this and gave her thoughts on the ordinance and what she read it and what she would like to add to it or see be add to it. Even today, Mr. McNanus stood up and asked about the dispensaries being included in it. So these are all the information we would like to see and hear. So we have that, it doesn't hurt to have too much information as we're going forward, and when it comes back to us, that's the thought that I had on it.
Okay.
Okay?
Good. That kind of clears it up so we know the process. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other public comment, or? Now, I'm going to try this one more time. I think we're adjourned. Sorry.